The dust is yet to settle in the northeastern region of Nigeria following a devastating and highly coordinated ambush that has left the nation in deep mourning and raised serious questions about the evolving tactics of terrorist groups operating within our borders. Early Sunday morning on the 1st of March 2026, the harsh reality of the ongoing security crisis in Borno State was once again brought to the forefront when heavily armed militants suspected to be fighters from the Islamic State West Africa province launched a massive and deadly offensive against a Nigerian military installation. The target of this brazen attack was the forward operating base located at the strategic Banki Junction, situated right along the vital Bama to Goza road. This particular stretch of road has historically been a highly contested zone, serving as a critical artery for both military logistics and civilian movement, making the base a primary target for insurgents looking to make a violent statement and disrupt the fragile peace in the area. According to verified reports and military sources on the ground, the terrorists did not just stumble upon this base. This was a calculated, well-planned assault. Under the cover of darkness, at exactly 4 p.m. in the morning, the militants descended upon the military facility in multiple groups. They arrived in a fleet of gun trucks mounted with heavy weaponry and a swarm of motorcycles, a signature movement tactic that allows them to navigate the difficult terrain of the Borno landscape quickly and quietly. Before the soldiers stationed at the base could fully comprehend the scale of the impending danger, the insurgents opened fire sporadically from different directions, raining bullets and explosive projectiles onto the compound. The sheer volume of the incoming fire created absolute chaos, forcing the brave men of the Nigerian Army into a desperate, intense gun battle to defend their position and protect their comrades. Tragically, the overwhelming force of the initial ambush resulted in severe casualties for the military, leading to the heartbreaking death of a highly respected and courageous Army Major identified as Major U.I. Mairiga, who lost his life while valiantly trying to coordinate a defense against the invading terrorists. Several other soldiers also paid the ultimate price during this brutal encounter, while others were forced to tactically retreat into the surrounding bush to avoid complete annihilation, and their bodies are currently being transferred to the 7th Division Military Hospital in Maiduguri. The loss of an Army Major and several enlisted men is a massive blow to the morale of the armed forces and a stark reminder of the extreme dangers our military personnel face every single day while trying to secure the nation. However, this tragic event at Banki Junction was only one part of a much larger synchronized wave of violence unleashed by the insurgents across Borno State over the weekend. In a desperate bid to overwhelm the security forces and claim more territory, the terrorists simultaneously targeted several other military bases in the region, including the forward operating bases in Mayanti, Gajigana, and Gajiram. But the Nigerian military, operating under the Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadinkai, quickly recovered from the initial shock and mounted a fierce, unyielding resistance. The troops stationed at these other locations demonstrated incredible resilience and battlefield dominance, decisively foiling the coordinated attacks and turning the tide against the insurgents. In Mayanti, for instance, the soldiers stood their ground against a large number of attackers, engaging them in a prolonged firefight that eventually broke the terrorists' momentum. By the time the smoke cleared, the military had successfully neutralized 5 of the attackers in Mayanti, 3 at Gajiram, and 2 during the Gajigana encounters. This swift and lethal response by the troops of Operation Hadinkai not only prevented the terrorists from overrunning these critical bases, but also resulted in the recovery of a substantial amount of combat equipment that the fleeing militants left behind in their disorderly retreat. The Nigerian Army proudly displayed the recovered arsenal, which included 3 PKT automatic anti-aircraft guns, 2 RPG-7 tubes used for launching rocket-propelled grenades, 4 AK-47 rifles, 2 FN rifles, 3 RPG bombs, and large quantities of 7.62mm ammunition. The capture of such heavy and destructive weaponry is a significant victory, as it directly diminishes the enemy's capacity to launch further large-scale attacks in the immediate future. Military spokespersons have stated that these failed assaults underscore the growing desperation of the terrorist elements who are currently buckling under sustained pressure on their hidden enclaves, their secret logistic structures, and their ever-changing leadership structures. As we continue to analyze the depth of this ongoing conflict and the heroic sacrifices being made by our soldiers on the front lines, it is crucial that we stand together as a nation and stay fully informed about the realities of our national security. Bringing you these detailed factual updates from the hardest hit zones in Nigeria requires constant monitoring and dedication. If you appreciate this comprehensive breakdown of the Borno State military operations and want to ensure that you are always the first to know when major security developments happen in 2026, please take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. Your active support helps this channel grow, allows us to push these vital stories to a wider audience, and ensures that the bravery of our fallen heroes like Major Mairega is never forgotten in the fast-paced news cycle. Understanding the broader context of this massive ambush requires us to look at the shifting dynamics between the different terrorist factions currently operating in the Lake Chad region and Sambisa Forest. For over 15 years, Nigeria has been locked in a grueling war against violent extremism, initially spearheaded by Boko Haram and later complicated by the emergence of the Islamic State West Africa province. Over the past few years, we have seen intense bloody rivalries between these two groups, with ISWAP gradually gaining the upper hand, absorbing many former Boko Haram fighters and adopting more sophisticated military-style tactics. Unlike the older factions that frequently targeted soft civilian populations, ISWAP has shown a clear strategic preference for attacking military installations, aiming to capture weapons, establish dominance, and demoralize the armed forces. They utilize advanced intelligence gathering, sometimes heavily relying on informants within local communities, and they deploy advanced technologies, including commercial drones, for surveillance to study the layout and vulnerabilities of military bases before they strike. This level of planning was clearly evident in the weekend attacks, showing that the enemy is constantly adapting and finding new ways to challenge the authority of the Nigerian state. The Borno State government, led by Governor Babagana Zulum, has repeatedly sounded the alarm about the evolving nature of this threat, warning that despite the undeniable progress made by the military in clearing out several strongholds, the terrorists are constantly trying to regroup in the difficult terrains of the Mandara Mountains and the Timbus area of Lake Chad. The governor has passionately argued that kinetic military action alone, no matter how intense, cannot completely wipe out an ideology that is being fueled by external support, illegal cross-border arms smuggling, and the harsh economic realities that make vulnerable youth susceptible to radicalization. The porous nature of our national borders remains a massive security weakness, allowing these armed groups to slip into neighboring countries like Niger, Chad, and Cameroon when the military turns up the heat, only to return and strike when they sense an opportunity. This cross-border mobility makes the fight incredibly frustrating and drawn out, requiring not just national effort but deep, continuous regional cooperation. Furthermore, the toll this endless violence takes on the civilian population of Borno State is absolutely heartbreaking. Just as communities begin to rebuild their shattered lives, return to their ancestral farming lands, and hope for a peaceful future, attacks like the one at Banki Junction shatter their sense of security all over again. The destruction of military vehicles, the burning of armored tanks, and the temporary displacement of soldiers create a massive vacuum of protection that leaves nearby villages extremely vulnerable to kidnappings, extortion, and night raids. Recently, there have been terrifying reports of terrorist groups demanding millions of naira in ransom from poor displaced herder communities in exchange for abducted children, proving that while they may claim religious motives, their actions are deeply rooted in organized criminality and pure evil. The people of the Northeast have endured a relentless nightmare for over a decade and a half, and the loss of the very soldiers sent to protect them only deepens the psychological wounds of this long war. Despite the heavy, painful losses suffered this week, the Nigerian armed forces remain totally resolute in their mission to completely eradicate this menace from our land. The clearance operations are continuing with even greater intensity across the Sambisa Forest, the Mandara Mountains, and the infamous Timbuktu Triangle. Special forces and intelligence units are working around the clock to track down the fleeing remnants of the ISWAP fighters responsible for the Banki Junction ambush, and the military command has promised that the death of Major Mairiga and his brave men will not be unpunished. As citizens, all we can do is offer our deepest prayers for the families of the fallen heroes, support the ongoing military campaigns, and hold firmly to the hope that the dark days of insurgency will soon be permanently behind us. The road to total peace in Borno State is clearly still paved with significant danger, but the unwavering courage of the Nigerian soldier continues to be the ultimate shield standing between our communities and total chaos.